John D. Rockefeller had many fierce enemies throughout his career, including Andrew Carnegie and even some US presidents. Despite his ruthless competition, his journey from poverty to becoming a titan of the oil industry is remarkable. His story is both inspiring and chilling, showcasing the extremes of unchecked ambition and greed. Let's go back to 1839, where John D. Rockefeller's story begins. Born into a poor family, John was the first child of peasant farmers with little money. His father, known as Devil Bill, was a mysterious and unreliable man who left the family frequently, engaging in various odd jobs and scams. Bill's absences forced young John to help his mother on the farm, where he learned the value of hard work and discipline. Even as a young child, John was resourceful. He once raised and sold turkeys for a profit, contributing to the family's finances. However, their life was unstable, with occasional luxuries from Bill's con artistry. This instability worsened when Bill was accused of assault, forcing the family to relocate. Bill continued his deceitful ways, secretly marrying another woman and leaving John to take on more responsibilities at home. At 16, John had to abandon his dream of college to support his family. After many rejections, he finally secured a bookkeeping job, marking September 26th as his personal job day for the rest of his life. This job taught him the basics of business and gave him a taste of independence from his unreliable father. After a few years, a recession hit, and John's firm struggled. Undeterred, John and his friend Maurice Clark started their own produce business. They worked hard, but the American Civil War's economic boost turned their efforts into significant profits. This success led John to a new opportunity, the oil industry. In 1859, the discovery of oil in Pennsylvania opened a new market. John and Maurice invested in a refinery with Samuel Andrews, leading to massive profits from selling kerosene. They eventually abandoned their produce business to focus solely on oil. The oil market was volatile, but John persevered, buying out Maurice's share and rebranding as Standard Oil. Partnering with Henry Flagler, they ruthlessly expanded their business, securing secret transportation deals with railroads to undercut competitors. These tactics led to dominating the market and crushing the competition. Despite the ethical concerns, Rockefeller's aggressive strategies made Standard Oil incredibly successful. Even when faced with public backlash and protests, John continued to consolidate power, eventually forming monopolistic alliances with railroads. Though the South Improvement Company (SIC) failed, it instilled fear in competitors, allowing John to acquire numerous refineries at low prices. Through determination, strategic alliances, and ruthless business practices, John D. Rockefeller built an oil empire, transforming from a poor farmer's son to one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in history. Tom Scott, the owner of the Pennsylvania Railroad, decided to lay his own pipelines and started building his own oil refineries. Now Scott was in direct competition with John, so John interpreted this as a declaration of war. John decided to launch an all-out attack against America's most powerful company. First, he canceled all his business with the Pennsylvania Railroad, redirecting all that oil to other railroads instead. Then, John lowered the price of Standard Oil kerosene, forcing competitors to do the same, thus reducing their profit margins and decreasing their shipment orders on the Pennsylvania Railroad. Finally, John convinced the New York Central and Erie Railroads to drastically lower their shipping fees for everyone, ensuring the Pennsylvania Railroad lost even more business. These strategies most definitely worked. To compete with all this, the Pennsylvania Railroad had to pay refiners to transport oil for them. Scott also had to lay off hundreds of his employees and reduce the salaries of those who stayed by 20%. But John's attack didn't just affect the Pennsylvania Railroad. Another big railroad, the B&O, had to make similar layoffs and wage cuts, inadvertently causing one of the most violent labor strikes in American history. Dozens of people died in the commotion, and in Pittsburgh alone, the Pennsylvania Railroad lost 500 freight cars, 120 locomotives, and 27 buildings after they were torched by protesters. Even John started to get concerned by the chaos that was unfolding. Before long, The Pennsylvania Railroad, a Goliath once thought to be invincible, had lost the battle against Standard Oil, and Tom Scott was more than ready to surrender. Scott was in a desperate position, and John's business partner Henry, who saw business as war, saw this as an opportunity to crush him totally. But John had a better idea and instead moved to coordinate a massive deal with the railroads. John agreed to help the Pennsylvania Railroad survive by guaranteeing 47% of Standard's traffic to them. The New York Central, the Erie, and the B&O got the rest. In exchange for the steady source of shipments, John demanded a very large secret rebate on the Pennsylvania's official rates, even more detailed information about their competitors' shipments, and 20 cents for every single barrel that passed through any of the railroads as well. A lot of this was similar to the secret alliance that had been proposed before, but this time, John was the one who held the balance of power and could basically demand what he wanted. The railroads had little choice. This deal effectively made John one of the most powerful men in America. John basically now owned the railroads. He essentially controlled the oil industry and had an all-seeing eye into every one of his competitors. He completely dominated Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia, and there were only a few scattered refineries in New York that weren't his. Standard Oil was now in control of almost 90% of the entire oil refining industry. However, as for John's rival, Tom Scott, even though John had now technically struck up a deal with his company, the Pennsylvania Railroad never regained its footing, and Scott personally never recovered from his humiliating defeat. Just a year later, Scott suffered from a stroke and died shortly after. Many years earlier, Tom Scott had been the mentor to a young Andrew Carnegie, who was to the steel industry what John was to the oil industry. Carnegie blamed the death of his beloved mentor on John, and thus a rivalry was born between Carnegie and Rockefeller. The king of oil versus the king of steel. The rivalry between these two titans of industry would intensify as time went on, but for now, both men were determined to become wealthier than the other. In the midst of all this, John was becoming quite a notorious public figure. The fight with the Pennsylvania Railroad, his rivalry with Carnegie, and his tremendous wealth and power had all taken John from a mysterious oilman in Cleveland, Ohio, to one of the most controversial figures in American newspapers. And yet, for all his wealth, fame, and power, John didn't indulge in the extravagant lifestyle that many of his peers did. When he moved to New York, John spent his free time playing with his children instead of seeking the company of wealthy bankers or celebrities, and he rarely bought expensive clothes or luxuries. Silently managing his army of puppets from their new office in New York, John was enriched by his 90% dominance of the oil refining industry. It seemed like he could now just sit back and enjoy the fruits of their labor. But actually, the opposite was true. Even though he had achieved total dominance, the state of the industry was changing, and fast. A few years earlier, Thomas Edison patented a light bulb that gave off a powerful white light for 100 hours, and he was pushing to light the country with electricity instead of oil. Then, in 1885, a huge deposit of crude oil was found in northern Ohio. These two events meant many Standard Oil executives started to panic, fearing a massive oil surplus that would take the industry back to the days when oil was priced at 10 cents per barrel. But while his company was panicking, John was as calm as ever. By now, he was a master at turning chaotic situations into opportunities, and this was exactly the crisis he had been waiting for. John D. Rockefeller's rise from poverty to the pinnacle of the oil industry is a testament to his relentless ambition and strategic genius. Despite his controversial methods and fierce rivalries, his impact on American industry is undeniable. His story serves as a powerful reminder of the extremes of unchecked ambition and the transformative power of perseverance. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Rockefeller's remarkable life. If you enjoyed this video and want to explore more stories of wealth, power, and luxury, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Stay tuned to the World of Luxury YouTube channel for more fascinating content. See you in the next video.